So hello and welcome to the Ilisarniq series workshop on Inuit art and the archives. My name is Yvonne Morehouse. I am very honored and I'm very thankful to be joining you today from Red Deer, located within Treaty 6, Treaty 7 territory. Treaty 7 land is the traditional territory of the Blackfoot, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda people. Treaty 6 land is traditional Cree and Saulteaux territory, and this land is also recognized as a historical Métis gathering site. I am a happy and proud Inuk, raised in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Labrador. English on my dad's side. My mom's side is from Nunatsiavut and Nunavik. I have a degree in art history and Indigenous studies from Carleton University. I spent many years working with a bunch of different Inuit organizations, including Inuit Broadcasting Corporation, Inuit Circumpolar Council. Lately, I've been a visual arts student at Red Deer Polytechnic, and I'm thankful to use this training along with my work background to live a life of creating, curating, learning, and sharing. And I would like to very warmly welcome you today to this Ilisarniq series panel discussion, where we will be discussing and learning about Inuit art and the archives. So now I would like to welcome our amazing panel of artists today. We have three artists who all have very different experience and process of working with archival materials in their practice. These artists were featured in the latest issue of Gathering, which if you haven't seen this yet, I highly recommend. Amazing. Article in there titled Pass Forward by asinnajaq. The issue is now available in print and online. So if we're thinking of how do Inuit artists engage with the personal memories and shared histories embedded within photographs, videos, and sounds of the past, this workshop is an invitation to reflect on how artists can work with these materials to renew old ideas and inspire new ones. The panel will discuss some of the major historical challenges to building and maintaining Inuit art archives, as well as inspirations and challenges that each of them have encountered with specific examples from their own practice. Let's do some intros so you can meet our artists. I'm going to start with Lindsay McIntyre. She joins us today from Vancouver, a filmmaker and a film artist. She uses analog film and handmade emulsions to create moving picture portraits. Lindsay, if you would maybe let us know what you're working on today or something about yourself that you'd like to give for your intro.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm joining you from the unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh. I make a lot of different kinds of films. Right now, at this moment, I'm working on a piece where I'm harvesting caribou and making caribou emulsion. So it has to do with the importance of caribou to Inuit, but also has a lot to do with lichen and cycles and things like that. So it's a really, really labor-intensive project that is, some stages are complete, but there'll be it'll be a very long-term project for me as well.
Exciting, thank you. That sounds amazing. Asinnajaq is joining us today, a multimedia artist and curator. Their practice is grounded in research and collaboration. And when working with archival or historical materials, one of their goals is to shift from a hurtful gaze to a family one. So that's just a short few lines, of course, but if you would like to add a little bit more about yourself or your art practice, we would love to hear.
Hello. I'll tell you something secret about myself, which is that I actually can't work or sit at my desk if this doesn't have a candle in it. So that's all.
Okay, well, welcome. Thank you for sharing. Always love getting all those little details. Niap is joining us also today from Montreal area, a multimedia artist who works in carvings, textiles, paintings, and more. And through her work, she explores and investigates her identity as an Inuk woman. So Niap, you're known as a community advocate, a throat singer, and a mural artist, among many other things. Are you able to tell us of any recent or upcoming projects that you're working on?
Thank you so much for inviting me, and thanks to everybody who's here. Welcome. Right now, I'm actually a very new mom. I have my most masterpiece, my most wonderful masterpiece that I'm working on. But I'm actually working on a series right now, like of embroidery on photos. It's taking much longer than expected. I have a few murals coming up. A lot of stuff. It all depends on the inspiration, kind of what picks my mind and what gets me curious. So but right now I'm on a unofficial maternity leave doing murals and embroidering. So yeah, it's
Busy.
very busy.
Thank you everybody for joining us. And for your intros, it's so good to see you. And I think we can just kind of get into everything. Okay, so I think first we'll kind of get into specific examples or one piece of artwork that engages with the archive that you're working on. Asinnajaq, if I could start with you, if that would be okay. I know that we had a discussion before this, and it was about how I used to imagine the archives as a cold and unwelcoming like building, inaccessible. And you definitely said that's not the case at all, and that they can be more like a living subject or a living person. And you also mentioned ideas of how we are seen and documented and remembered. So, maybe you could let us know either how this drives your work or influences your work, working directly with archives or archival materials.
It will be a pleasure. And if I may, I will share a presentation I have previously prepared to answer this question. So I love archives and spend lots of time with them. I see there as being three different kinds of archives that I work with, and I'm sure there's so many more in betweens and other kinds that are possible. But here I have public things that are publicly accessible and housed by organizations that work for countries or communities, specifically family archives and personal archives. And I work with all of these. And I think it's interesting while working with these different entities, thinking about who can access them, how you can access them, who can use them, how they're used, and how using them is like governed or not governed, and etc. So examples of public ones are the librarian archives, the National Film Board, and one that I love is the archives that are held by AFATAC. So many archives, public ones, are really open and accessible to anyone. And you can easily look through online at many of the photos that are available from the Libraries and Archives Canada. Another one that I worked with really intimately is the National Film Board's archive, which, like I said, anyone can, this is not a special access. Anyone can look at these and see them and look at what they have to offer. I made a film with those archives that literally anyone can look at. Of course, not everyone can, like, you have to be able to pay for them, which is like a whole other topic of conversation, what it costs to use these archives. And I think that this question is a really important question. And it does feel like sometimes it feels like, how dare you ask me to pay for literally the image of my grandmother, or like so that's a whole can of worms that gets opened with archives. But yeah, I made an entire film using them. I don't think I'm gonna show a clip right now, but anyone can see it. That's available online. yeah, it's through working on this film 3000 that I learned so much about the archives. And I learned about film as a medium so much. And in 3000, one of the really incredible things that's present in it is like a film history where it goes from the like first kinds of images with some of the first machines that were used to capture moving images, and then through time, different cameras, beta cams, like the first video capturing devices. This history is alive in our archive, and is something that's present in this film. Also, the change of our relationship with the camera, going from people that are being gazed upon, honestly, really violently at first, and then the camera changing hands to it being Inuit that are choosing what to show and what to share. And that's another really incredible thing that's a part of it. Yeah, there's people who like run away from the camera in the archive, and some people who really embrace it, and it's one of the things that we can see in it. I also use like books, libraries and books, and those are also like a library is an archive, right? And I have my whole own if I go to a library anywhere, I will leave with so many pictures just like this of things that I want to remember for a while. So that's my quick rundown of the public archives. I think that those archives are the ones that have the biggest questions for me. And I think it's really part of my like moral obligation, I guess, to think about consent when it comes to the archive, how images were taken, and making sure that I use them in the best way possible. And also I don't feel like I have the like quote unquote right to just any archive. And I really try to access things that feel good to me. I also think it's a great place to think about what an image actually represents. Like, what does it represent, and what can you take from someone or a place or anything? So, yeah. Then we have a family archive, which I think probably most families have. And I love my family archive. I have photos from my uncle that my family gave me because I want to make a film about him. And it's really incredible to get to see how he saw the world. And my dad is a photographer, and though many people haven't seen them, I've seen them and spent so much time taking photos with him. And looking at his photos is one of the biggest ways that I learned to look at the world and to look for what's beautiful and learn about interesting ways of seeing. So that family archive is something that is more personal, but that I learn a lot from. And also getting to see my family, obviously amazing, and helps me so much with understanding who I am. Like, it's definitely amazing seeing the public archives, and especially at Avatak, like I can see my family archive, like a part of their archive is my family archive, but like my real family one and what's interesting to them and everything is so important to me. And I have used my family archive in my artwork. So this is my brother, Nally, when he was a baby sleeping in our land. And this is like an amalgamation of a painting I made on him. And this is me and my parents. This was in one of the first video works I made. That's called Upinhoksitik, and it's about my love of Nunavik. Then I have a personal archive, and basically what I'm learning is like almost all of my work comes from some form of archive or other. So I have a massive library of photographs that is like, I don't know why I'm taking it. I usually don't know what a photo's for. I just take so many photos and then eventually turn them into an artwork. So just to give you an idea, these, other than the video, these two photos I turned into an artwork from my personal archive and then into an artwork. And the fabric on this like tensile structure is also from my personal archive. So yeah, I feel like there's a million things to talk about and we'll keep talking about it, but this is just my welcome to the archives.
Thank you. No, that's wonderful. I think that is an amazing intro, I think, to get us kind of thinking about what archives can mean to different people and what archives can be, like how to access, you know, like you said, there's the public, there's family, there's your own, and how they can kind of overlap and interact with each other. And sometimes I think it's important to recognize too, of course, sometimes as artists, we're just gathering. We don't even know why for a long time. You know, those archives are just going to sit there until you're ready to deal with them or revisit them. And thank you for giving us, I think, a good framework to get this discussion, you know, really moving. I love seeing your pieces. Thank you. And I love knowing that, of course, sometimes you think you've got too much stuff gathered, but then you talk to other artists and you're like, no, wait, we all do this. It's okay. So that's wonderful. Thank you. I think we can also maybe ask our other artists too, you know, maybe Lindsay, if you are working with or have been working with specific archival objects or how you engage with them, you know, or how you deal with your own personal archives and bring that into your art as well, or how you even maybe gained access to these objects and the process that you've used to engage with them.
Sure. Thank you for that, asinnajaq. That feels like a really good place to start. I feel a real kindred spirit in you in the way that you think about archives, because as you were speaking, I was like, oh my God, I love archives too. And I do that too. And oh, that's so interesting. I'm even making a film about my uncle too. And I'm going to show you guys some footage of that. I think it's interesting to think about how we approach an archive or what we consider an archive. I think I am pretty loose with the term archive. I think of a lot of different kinds of things as archive, like an archive of knowledge of how to work with caribou, for example, is a thing that doesn't necessarily live in one space or inside of one person, but I do think of it like an archive of knowledge, or the archive of knowledge embedded in lichen for this project that I'm working on now, which it will work with some archival footage, absolutely, but I guess that's what I'm saying is I think of these other things as archives as well, like lichen, like what an incredible organism that is, right? And the knowledge that it holds and that we can access, but it's also, yeah, you think about access and who accesses that and how do you access that and how do you access that responsibly? Because I think with archives, they, like traditional archives, they sit and they hold so much power. And so often the framework around an archive is about control, like access and control. So access, ownership, control, thinking about those sort of like key components of how we work with cultural objects or research in general, right? Those are ethical concerns. And I think that I feel like I have a moral obligation to share some of the things that I have accessed within archives. A lot of the work that I do comes from my family archives, my grandmother Kumatna and my uncle Kiriak. And I also think you have to be really careful about how we work with those things. So how we work with story, how we create stories out of archives. But they are really such beautiful, beautiful things that I think much of my work involves archives of some kind. When I first was invited to take part in this, I'm like, archives? Do I really work with archives? And if I sat down and thought about it, it's like, actually, yeah, in just about everything I do, I'm working with an archive. I'm just not thinking about it like that kind of institutional archive. Like, I don't ever go to the NFB and ask them for footage or dig through, you know, the things that they have sort of cataloged and archived and determined are part of an archive. I'm accessing other kinds of archives. So personal archives as well, because I've been shooting film and working with 16mm mostly for about 25 years. I am often actually going back to my own archive of footage of things that I shot within another project that have become an archive, or looking back on the things from my own life to speak to or think about a thing, a more present issue. So there are lots of ways to think about it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think that's important too. You know, like I said earlier, we did have a little bit of a pre-discussion about what archives are and what I imagine archives to be. I think I got kind of stuck in a format of archives being a building that have power, that have control, that you have to ask specific permission to. I think I got stuck there when I did my university and I was really young. And I didn't understand how these places worked and who they worked for or how they could be accessed. And so I think that idea of archives to me always remained a little bit negative. But then, talking about things like this, of course, we have personal archives and family archives, and of course, how dare they ask us to pay for an image of our grandmother? Like, this is all really important to remind ourselves and encourage ourselves and make sure that, yes, archives don't just have to be this box that's a little bit scary. They can be all kinds of things, as long as we are also aware and making sure we're doing the right kind of things with them. Like you said, the moral obligations that come up on how you're accessing these, how we work with these stories, and how sometimes we create stories. Of course, that's something on the other side that is very important too. Niap, I see that you've got a little baby there, and if you are able to join us and let us know, your kind of works with the archives. I know that we had spoken before about your embroidery on photos, that kind of thing. Maybe how you access those kinds of archives, or how you interact with the archives, your personal ones or family ones or public ones, or any experience like that.
So yeah, I do have my baby. She's being a bit fussy. She's very social, so she kind of wants to see faces. So yeah, I kind of have a different opinion on what kind of access we should have on archives. What asinnajaq was saying, it's not a right. I think that's what you were saying, that it's not a, intrinsic right to have access to them. And I think we should. And I mean, what I've been working with is public archives, photos, to which is not very complicated to have the right of use. To be completely honest, because I've had bad experiences in the past. But as Nunavummiut, as Inuit, I think anything that that touches our past, and I think we have the right to celebrate them, and that's kind of where I kind of come from. That I want to celebrate them. have them be seen rather than be, you know, archived. I think I think there's so many, you know, beautiful images and beautiful things that, you know, we don't get to see every day. And we're kind of stuck in this idea of what Inuit are, and, you know, what Inuit art, you know, I mean, not us as artists or as Inuit, but people, you know, the spectator, the collector kind of are stuck with, you know, this idea of what art is and what Inuit art should be, and what Inuit should look like, and what they should be doing. And so having access to, you know, even more modern archival photos is, like, if we're talking like 70s, 80s kind of thing. Yeah, I think we have the right to them, and I think we, like you said, like, how dare you have us pay for it, and how dare you have, you know, have limited access to them. That's what I personally think. And the series that I'm right now working on have, you know, the public domain tagged to them, and it's a lot of very intimate photos of Kuutjaamiut, very close-up portraits, and they are, you know, they have family, and they have, some are still very much alive, and as much as it is personal, I think it, I don't know, as an artist, my role and my obligation is to celebrate Inuit culture and celebrate them and celebrate it all. I don't know, and to kind of bring it to light. So that's what I think. What do you think?
Yes, I think that makes a lot of sense too. You know, you don't ever want this material or these people or these stories to just be left, you know, in an archive forever. Then what?
What's the point otherwise? Like, you take pictures of them, and then what's the point? They just kind of stay there, and like artifacts and all this stuff. Like, I don't know. What's the point of having such a beautiful image or such a beautiful thing, and not have access to it, or limited access to it, or, you know, copyrights to them? I don't know.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that thing how artists are bringing archives to life, and that idea that, you know, it shouldn't just be sitting there. And I'm conflicted about archives. I think I don't engage with the institutional ones, partly because, I don't know, there's something that kind of offends me about them, that they've sort of collected these things and put them together in a box and in a place that you need an access card and permission and an appointment to come and see and visit. And but also I'm very grateful for them too, because there's so much information out there that doesn't make it into archives. And I told you guys a story when we were chatting earlier about this really recent thing that happened, where there was there were 3 400-foot reels of 16mm film that was black and white reversal original from 1927 that were for sale on eBay, that were of you know, somebody's home movie footage who was working on the Nescopi, like the supply ship that went to a whole bunch of the different communities in the north. And they shot footage while they were on that journey in all these different communities. And so there were lots and lots of really unusual and sort of non-institutionalized images of Inuit community in a bunch of different places. And it was unlike anything that I've ever seen anywhere. And it was really frustrating when I was chatting with the fellow who was selling these things, because I like reached out right away. I'm like, you shouldn't be selling these things. These need to go in an archive. These need to be given to the community. They have to be preserved. These are the only copy of these things that are in existence. You can kind of tell from the format of them, right? And it was an unfortunate kind of framework for things, because they were being sold as original objects. And so, you know, I pleaded again. I said, I'll make copies of them. I'll make film copies. I'll make digital copies. I'll give you those things. I'll pay for them and give them back to you if you want, but we need these things preserved in some way. And I wasn't able to, unfortunately, access those things. And so hopefully the person who bought those will do something with them, but otherwise those might be sort of lost. And so there's that thing that archives do where they do preserve and save and create access, but they also gatekeep access a little bit. So yeah.
I think gatekeeping is definitely something that, like you said, especially with a more formal archive idea, you know, like you wonder about how you're going to come up against gatekeeping or issues of access and acknowledgement. I just wanted to quickly mention there was a article in Inuit Art Quarterly in 2021. It was Natan Obed, and it was how to overcome the erasure of Inuit identity in archival photos. And it's a really good article that talks about how, you know, people that were in the photos before the actual Inuit didn't have the names, they were just the people. Things were taken from them, and they didn't have any humanity attached, really, in a weird, kind of ugly way. But now, well, it said, how can we know the photographer but not know the person in the photograph? And it is a tragic but too common thing that archival photographs lose the basic personal identification for Inuit. But now the article said how that's being turned around by people working with the archives, things like project naming, artists that are actually trying to access this and kind of gather as much information and share it as much as they can. So I think that's, you know, really important as well to see from different angles how people are trying to fix the wrongs, or at least make it a little bit better, bring the humanity back into that. So yeah, I think that's important to think about too. But yes, of course, everyone will have different opinions on how to access them.
Oh, Yvonne's frozen.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying that maybe this would be a good opportunity now. I know that you have a couple of short clips of your work that you've done with archival materials, and maybe you could share those with us. I think that might be a good kind of place to see how you incorporate all of these thoughts and ideas and materials into what you do, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah. That's a good idea. I have maybe I'll just start with, there's two clips. One of them has sound, so it's from a film that was part of the Inua exhibition at Kamayak that Asinnajaq and Jocelyn and a bunch of people were involved in. Also, Kula, who's on the call, helped do some of the animation for this. So there's just a clip, and I'll say that within this, which isn't, you wouldn't look at it and go, oh, there's a film with archival material, but it is working with so there are some archival objects within it. There are also so it's an animation. There's a landscape that's created out of some local plants and rocks and trees and things, but also some that are from my home territory. So I think of those as kind of archival. There's also a lot of images of maps and layers of maps that those did come from an archive where I had to request permission and get an ID card and go in. This from the Winnipeg archives that have to do with mostly my family story, but they are used here in another context. And it also uses archival footage that I believe is from a National Film Board documentary, but I didn't go and ask for permission for these things. I just used the images and made copies of them and then transformed them in ways that made sense for me without requesting permission. So we can watch the first clip from Ajihini Lukdautugut, We Are All Different. I think it's maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
Back then, Inuit were so welcoming, inclusive, and having that open-minded, but because of colonization, a lot of things have seemed to change because of how they were stripped down from their culture. Inuit were nomadic. They used to follow the weather conditions and the migration routes of the animals so that they could have a good basic needs to help them. So having that feeling to belong to that land was very important to them because they knew what it was like to be out on the land and to live out on the land and to survive out on the land, to thrive out on the land, and having that belonging.
I think it's different the way Inuit have a relationship with the land. Inuit values was about cooperation and being respectful to the land and taking what you need. Some of my first memories is always being told to be respectful towards those around you, and that includes your environment and the animals, because we all rely on each other.
In order to survive, we had to live that way, you know, seeing the humanity in the person next to us and knowing that we rely on each other, not just for survival, but to enjoy life.
But now that we're revitalizing and decolonizing, it feels like we're slowly bringing back those certain customs and practices, how to have that open mind, being inclusive and welcoming.
If we want our culture to survive and we do want to pass these skills on, we have to be grateful for what we do have first, and then to infuse a lot of love and energy into it in order to make it grow and to stay.
Because Inuit are everywhere now. Not all Inuit are in the north, and not everybody in the north is Inuit.
There are so many urban Inuit, and we all have felt somewhat displaced. And this sort of polar up north world and down south world. I mean, obviously so many Inuit want to be an Inuit, and I wish I could too. But I think the point is that from what I see with governments is that you're limited unless you are living in Nunavut. And then it's like, well then, what does it really mean to be Inuit? We're supposed to just stay up north. I feel like that's also a form of oppression.
I think the idea that in order to be Inuk and receive the benefits that Inuit receive, that you have to live in an Inuit community on Inuit Nunangat is very dangerous. In a sense, you can say it feels like forced relocation. If you want to benefit from being an Inuk, you've got to move up north. You've got to live up there. And I think that's very inappropriate because there are definitely very specific.
Hey, thanks. This is maybe a bit of stuff in the middle there that didn't really process archives, but that is just sort of one way of using archival material to make meaning within an artwork that isn't necessarily perhaps the way that the archive was intended to be used. But those are, so maybe just one example. So those objects like the bear that has no hair is a toy that my mom had growing up when she was a kid. And then there's most of the layers that you see there are either from a personal archive or from the National Film Board or from different places where I have found materials and turned them into things that are more meaningful than they were when I got to them.
So embarrassed to say that I've never seen your work before, and it's absolutely amazing. I
Thank you.
Absolutely love what I just saw. It's so layered and complex, and with the narration and the images, that was really beautiful.
Thank you. I'll send you a link to watch it. It's the work of very many people. I have one more clip that's, I don't know if we have time. Do we have time? I can speak over top of this one, so maybe we'll just watch that one. It's silent. So this one is working with family archives like what asinnajaq was talking about earlier. This is just sort of raw footage for a film that I'm making about my uncle Kiviak, who was the first Inuk lawyer, and he fought to define Inuit in law. So you can just play it, yeah. So it's an animation also shot on Super 16. I don't just do animation, I just happened to be showing animation today. And so he was taken from the north as a young boy, and his name was taken from him too. So he was given the name David Charles Ward, and grew up in the South and fought most of his life, not just as a boxer, as you can see here, but also as a lawyer and as an activist and an advocate for Inuit everywhere, and for Indigenous people everywhere. And he didn't have any children, and he kind of instead sort of created his own personal archive of all of the things that he has ever done in his life. And he did a lot of things. He was an alderman. He ran for mayor in the city of Edmonton. He was part of bringing all these big games like to different places. And he was a Golden Gloves boxing champion. He was also I always say he's the only Inuk who was ever an Eskimo, because he played for the Edmonton Eskimos football team in the 50s. And so he left behind this enormous archive of stuff, of these materials, of the things that were important to him. So there's a lot of these sorts of objects, which is what is mostly being played with in this raw footage. But there's also a lot, like 7 massive binders of every time he ever made it into the newspaper. And so this is one of the, this is what he did. He sort of underlined everything in red. And so his personal archive is this, like I own it, like I have it, and it's literally my responsibility to build this into something and to sort of give Kiviaq back to the community that he was taken from. And it centers around the idea of naming, because one of the things that he did was he fought the provincial government for the right to reclaim his original Inuk name, his singular Inuk name of Kiviaq. And he won. Well, it did take quite a while to do that. And so looking at the idea of naming and how important naming is in Inuit culture, to think about what that means to have taken somebody's name and to take your own name back. And so that's partly what this piece is. And I guess you could say that it's entirely made up of archival material that I'm sort of playing with in different ways, but really is about doing it in a good way and seeing the beauty in things and thinking about ways that I can honor the material and think about it in a good way in giving it back to Inuit.
That was wonderful. Thank you for both of those. They both very different feelings, but also, I mean, thank you for leading us through them. I think there's something really powerful and important. Like you said, you have his archives, and there's a responsibility there. And I think that is something that definitely needs to be always considered. You know, and I know that we've touched on it before already today, what that responsibility means, and taking it and seeing the beauty in it, honoring the material, giving it back to Inuit with good intention, I think is just so important. And it feels really good. It feels almost healing to share it in that way, you know, like since so much of it had been accessed and acquired in various ways of like the governmental archives, or, you know, something that feels colder and not as friendly. But having this and really having it connected as direct family and keeping those stories going, it is very, very important and profound. So thank you for sharing those. I do appreciate, and I feel like I could talk about this with all of you all day. I would talk about this all day with you, but I think I don't mean to just jump away from your one, because it is really important, but I also wanted to make sure if Niap she had shared some images as well with us. So I don't know, I'm not sure if she's available there right now. I just wanted to give her a chance in case she wanted to share what she had, so she could, you know, let us know. Are you able to share your image?
I'm here just multitasking.
Okay, it's fine. We can come back to you too if you'd rather.
So it's fine. I'm just source of food for someone right now.
Okay. Perhaps if Danielle were to show you images, would you like to talk your way through them? Is that something that you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love this so much. I love the image, and this project actually came with National Library, La Bibliothèque Nationale. It was for, you know, the month of Indigenous language or something like that, and they gave me access to photos and gave me access to photos of Kuujjuaq And, you know, looking through them, I saw my mom playing baseball, and I had seen like a bunch of community members. And so of all of the images that I was given access to, I chose 3, and I've shared 2 here with you. And this is one of them. I thought it was very, you know, like a striking photo, and I just loved how, you know, modern and unexpected it was. And so it was to give kind of a word to each photo. And this one I gave the word kutsuyaq, which is the color pink, which literally translates to pink. Ila literally translates to the color of bubblegum. So kutsuyaq in my language is pink, but it translates literally to the color of bubblegum. So I had embroidered in the back, and I kind of decided to go, you know, very rough with the embroidery, and I added watercolor to the bubblegum, and it came out, you know, I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. And the idea of tattoos kind of came with, you see there's like dots in the background behind his head already. And with that, that's kind of why I decided to add the unique patterns to that. I think we can show the next one. So this one, the word I chose for this one was naliniq, so love. You don't see the face of the mother, but you can tell that there's like a lot of pride. And I really love the idea of the ulipakak kind of, you know, carrying the both. And colors of ulipakaks, what she's using to carry the baby is usually so colorful, and I thought it was like sad to see it only as black and white. So that's why I decided to add the red embroidery to it, because it usually does have like the striking bright red. I'm actually waiting for my ulipakak soon. And I wanted to put the focus on the 2, so I kind of blurred out the background with watercolor. And yeah, what's really sad about these is that, you know, well, I mean, it's amazing that they asked me to do something like this. They blew them up afterwards and plastered them all over the library in their elevators, and they had the word in Inuit, and, you know, it was a literal translation and all this stuff. And it was a cool way to celebrate. But then once I wanted the work back, because it becomes, you know, my work of art, they refused to give it to me, which was kind of weird, which was, you know, I don't know, a bit weird, because I could have thought of a billion places to keep them other than in a drawer at the library. I wish we could have continued celebrating them. And then, so that this, you know, the 3-piece series that I did for the library, I said, screw this, I'm gonna do my own one. I'm gonna continue inspired by what I did for the library. I'll do my own. And so I went to Avatak and I looked through the public domain images, and I found images that I thought were striking, and where I saw I could add embroidery to. And I have a weird way of seeing the spring light, as, you know, for some reason I see spring as pink. So I added like a lot of pink and yellows and pastel colors to this, because it doesn't look like it, but it's an image of spring in the north. And so yeah, I'm working on the series right now, where I have a lot of very striking images. And they are very, some of them are portraits, very intimate, very much family members. And, you know, I'm going to kind of, how can I explain what I'm thinking? I'm going to stay by my idea that they are public domain, and I'm allowed to use them. I've been told in the past that I try to make money off of dead people, which is horrible to be told that, because what I'm doing, but what I think I'm doing is celebrating the beautiful image and celebrating the beautiful person, and adding beauty to something that looks so sad and cold, like the black and white. Because people think of the North as barren land, gray or white or full of snow, but they don't realize it's full of color. And when I see like this specific image, I see turquoise and I see pinks and I see like golds, and people don't see that, so I kind of want to add to it. So yeah, I am a visual artist, and that's what I do for a living. So yeah, I do sell my archival work, and like I do sell the work that I worked on. I don't know if I'm trying to make money off dead people. That's not really the idea behind it, but yeah, I enjoy working with these, and I really liked what asinnajaq said about their living photos. It's kind of like a living being, and it's a good thing that we're bringing them back out and reclaiming them and owning them. This is of our land, this is of our people and of our tradition, and we're allowed to share. And the fact that the library still has these images is really, it breaks my heart.
And did they tell you that you couldn't have them because they owned the rights to the images or something?
Yeah.
Is that how that was?
Yeah, something about I had to request to own them or to have access to them, but after the fact that I worked on them. So that I don't understand where that came from, because they first gave me access to them, I used them, I worked on them, and I'm like, okay, cool. So, and it's my very naive and very beginner error for not asking what's going to happen with the images afterwards. So I was kind of surprised when they're like, oh no, we paid you to do that, but then you don't own the work, it's ours. So I thought that was kind of weird.
So if those works are now in a drawer after you've made them.
I don't know where they are. I really actually don't know where they are. Physically, I know that they had made copies of them, and in vinyl, they put them around the library, in the elevator, and all this, but I don't know where they physically are right now. Are they framed? Are they in somebody's office? Are they, I did get paid like a fair price to work on them, like to have them, I don't know how to, it's weird. It's a weird thing, because I did get paid to work on these photos, and I did get paid to have, them have the rights of usage of them so they can print them. And so it's kind of weird, like who do they belong to? Like, why would they pay me for the rights of use, and why would they give me the right of using them to work on them? It's a weird circle that just kind of keeps going and going,
Yeah. Are you now part of the archive that we can access? Like, is that one of these things?
It's a weird, complicated thing. So I just kind of them as is, but which is super unfortunate. Yeah.
As you are all presenting your pieces and videos and slides and everything, we did have a few really nice comments come in. I'm not sure if you can see the chat there, depending on how your screen is set up, but people are saying that everyone's work is so gorgeous, that it's beautiful. Everyone has shared something amazing. So I'm really happy that, of course, our audience is really appreciating this too, your work in this discussion. And they're actually in the question and answer box, something came in, and it's from an anonymous participant that said, Project naming was mentioned earlier. I'm wondering how people feel about this initiative, reuniting people with archival images taken from a colonialist gaze. Is it always welcome or constructive? I know that we could have an entire workshop on that question. So it's up to you if how much you really want to answer it, if you want to answer it at all. I think project naming was started with NS, I think. Nunavut Siviniksu, I think, was a project with them. And then it grew bigger. I don't have my project naming notes here, but it was around 2002, I think, that they started that. And then it went from being a project of getting NS students and others to share these archival images with their own family and elders in the communities to try and rename so many pictures from the communities that had pictures and images of people with no identifying factors about them at all. And so we talked about, well, I brought this up just now, you know, saying that it was one of the initiatives to try and rename things. But I don't know if anybody has any opinion or not right now that they would want to share about this, you know, reuniting people with archival images taken from a colonialist gaze. Is it always welcome or constructive? Is it too much to put you on the spot, asinnajaq, if I ask you?
It's okay. I think in this case, the photos that I know that are involved in the project are really sweet, and it is really empowering and unites people with their family members. I think that there does exist photos that that you probably wouldn't want to revisit. So I think it all depends on what the photo, like the photos themselves. And I think that for the most part, for most photos, it's a nice thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't particularly know a ton about project naming, but I do feel like that would be like one of the main focuses, you know, to make sure that it's people and community, not something that's going to be traumatizing, re-traumatizing. I would, you know, but I don't know enough about it to say with any certainty. Lindsay, do you have any experience or opinion on this question?
Maybe like a little bit. I've definitely written in and provided information for some of the photos, and sent in photos of my own, and provided contextual information for some of those things, both for project naming and for other archives where it says, you know, unnamed individual or something like that, unknown Inuit man or Inuit family or whatever. Those are, I think for me, it's welcome. Like I want to see those photos as soon as I found out about project naming, which probably was 2 or 3 years into its existence. It was like there was this very exciting, like eager sort of drive. Like I wanted to see every single image. Like I wanted to absolutely experience those things and see them, and was so excited to see them. And there were so many things that there was a lot of that sort of joy. But then there's also that really kind of devastating, like, oh my God, they don't know who this is. How can they not? Like, just look at this other photo where you've identified this person, like this is the same person. Or being frustrated that still so little is known in so many cases. I think it's a good drive. It's an important thing to do. And I mean, we've done it in my own like family archives multiple times. There's, you know, the big photo book, which I'm very, very blessed to have, where, you know, my second cousin went through it and got, you know, my grandmother or my step great grandfather to like identify who is this, where was this, what was this. And so then there's like little notes taken underneath it. It's a similar kind of process, you know, often would be done in a family circumstance, right? Like imagine like the classic idea of a family, you know, in middle America sitting around a projector watching their own home movies and sharing the stories that go with those home movies. That's the connection. Like the film and the images shouldn't exist without those stories attached to them. So that piece that's missing, that disconnection that has happened because of all of the colonial structures that have made it so that this is how we're accessing our images or images of our own family. Those are all still there. So while there's that excitement, there's also that frustration and devastation. And so it's a conflicting process going through, it always is, going through any archive. I go to the Glenbow Museum and look through their archive, and it's the same kind of thing. It's like, how is this not known? And I feel sometimes like there's a lot of photos that just sit there with no care or attention taken to them. They disappear into the archive. So that's the downside of archives. And so at least project naming is getting them out there, making them public so that people can see them and participate a little bit. But it doesn't erase the other stuff that's all a part of it.
So absolutely. And I would hope too that, you know, of course, for projects like this, we're asking so much of a community or so much of, you know, individuals and elders and things, that if they are asked to be providing this information and providing, you know, whatever comes with that information, like emotionally or, you know, historically, that there would be supports for that too. I think that that would be, you know, when we were mentioning earlier, there's like ethics, obligation that surround these kinds of things, you know, and as people that would be doing the naming, as artists that are working with the archives, you know, there are the different responsibilities that you would have to make sure that you're handling this material properly, that you're respecting it properly, that you're presenting it in a proper way, and also having to take care of yourself going through these kinds of things, because there are, you know, archives aren't just, you know, they aren't just happy family pictures. They could be anything. They could be any type of material with any type of imagery. And I think that that's something also important to remember, that if you're dealing with these kinds of materials, it can affect you very personally on many levels, and taking care of yourself and taking care of that material are just as important while you're kind of filling those gaps, like you said.
There's also a piece to it where there's it's like it's insufficient. So there's a one photo, for example, of all of the women, not all of, but a bunch of the women from Kamanituak, which is the family, the community my family comes from, and it includes images of my great grandmother and other family members. But it's an image that I think it was part of project naming. It could be wrong. It could have been a different archive, but it was a whole bunch of people that were all unnamed, or I think they'd named one person within it, and there were maybe 12 or 15 women in it. And when I was first making a film about my grandmother Kumatna, and I went to Kamanituak, I was able to speak with some of the elders there. So Martha Tularuk showed me the photo, but the photo that she had, the same photo, had all of the names in Inuktitut in syllabics of all of the people. So this is this person, this is this person. And so I had this information, and the archive didn't have this information. And Martha Tularuk has since passed on. So I felt that perhaps I should share this information. But the other piece about it is that when Martha shared that with me and said, you know, this is this person, and she had a baby here and used to work here and traveled here and did this thing. And this person passed away shortly after this photo was taken, and this person is this person's cousin. All of that information is not being passed on within just giving this person a name. So there's that total insufficiency of all of those stories that I have, because I'm lucky to have, you know, access to those that are connected to those photographs that don't make it in. They just end up being names that, you know, are they even going to translate those names and attach them to the photo? I don't know. I haven't followed up to check, but it's not enough. It's not everything.
Absolutely. Who would be responsible for this? Like, yeah, you send this information in, is someone going to do anything with it? Or do you just send it to nowhere? Does it just end up in an inbox in a different archive that will, you know, there's so many layers, and there are so many gaps, you know, of the material and the information. So hopefully things like project naming, I'm not even sure how active project naming is right now. I don't know. Because like I said, I think it started around 2002 with NS, and then it became more of like a community involved project, but I'm not sure where that stands at the moment. That's something I wrote it down so I could look into that and kind of find out where that is going, or if it's going anywhere, if there's other like parallels to it. But you are so right. It's more than just names. It's people's lives and their families and everything that's connected to them. what do we lose? What do we lose by not talking about it? So yes, so that, I mean, that was a big question. Niap, I'm not sure if you have any other thoughts on that particular question about project naming, but you can definitely jump in there. But also, actually, I think
I
maybe,
think we just lost. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Maybe Baby needs a bit more attention at the moment, so that's fine. If she rejoins us, that's wonderful. But if not, that's okay. Heather Campbell just sent a question in as well. Is there one main message that you would like to share with archival institutions? Asinnajaq, can I start with you? If you have a message on the spot.
I think that I don't know that I have a main specific message, but I think that there are a lot of questions that can be talked and worked through. And I think one of the main really pressing issues right now is about the financial transactions around the archives and figuring out ways to make them more accessible to Indigenous people, especially that are, in relation really with the people and places that are in them. So I think that's just one of the main first things that's an important issue to work out with every institution that's holding archives that is used to financial transactions for allowance to use them.
Absolutely, that's huge. Absolutely huge. Should they be charging for this kind of information, especially if it is part of your own personal history? And what about people that want to access this that don't have those available funds? What does that matter? If they don't have funding from an institution to access this, what happens there?
I
is
think
really
usually,
important.
maybe not always, but I think usually you can access them, but to fold that work, the images into your own work and to make something new and to make it accessible, that's when you have to pay for it. And yeah, it's a huge barrier for so many artists.
Yeah, and I think that also speaks back to Lindsay when you're talking about eBay. This information on eBay, how is that just only available if you have thousands of dollars to send to someone for film that you've never even seen, or accessed before, any quality issues, anything like that? I think that's important too. So I don't know, Lindsay, if you have something else to either add to that, or the question of if you have a main message that you would like to share with an archival institution.
I do. Welcome back, Niap, too. I think that archives need artists. I think that archives need to get more creative about how they work. And I think that the barriers are not just financial, although they can be very substantial financial barriers, like the access to footage, because I work in moving media mostly. So, access to footage. Do I need worldwide rights? Do I need festival rights? Do I need North America rights? Do I need them in perpetuity forever, everywhere in the world for all time? Or do I just need it for this one little thing? And everything you want to do has a different point of access, a different pay scale attached to it. And but it's not just that, it's also the bureaucracy around it. And I understand the need to protect what we have and our cultural artifacts. And I'm really grateful that we have, systems that do that. But sometimes those systems can be very restrictive to artists or to Inuit or to communities, or, like Niap was talking about these horrible bureaucratic forms that she has to fill out to access her own work. How is it even theirs anymore, right? Sure, there's an original image, but there's also all these other things that come into play, especially in media, which is fair use and fair dealing. So fair use is more of an American concept, and fair dealing is a Canadian concept. And if you are using a piece of media in a way that transforms it enough that it has become something different, that it means something different than it was originally intended, then there's an argument you can make. But it's still an argument you have to make in a court of law, and those are really restrictive processes. So I think that archives need to be more creative. They need to get more creative about opening up the archive and thinking about ways and points of access, and thinking about ways of activating that. And that's the thing that they really need artists for, is to activate the archives. And I don't think there should be systems where people are, no, you did that work, I know, but you can't access that anymore, like what happened to Niap. I think it should be like, they should be grateful for what artists are doing with the archives, because it's helping get those things out into the world and sharing them with people. And what's the point of having them if we're not doing those things with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the collaboration levels could be definitely enhanced or even introduced in some places with artists being part of that team. I think that would, I mean, what an idea. What a huge difference that would make from day one of how this stuff can be accessed, and how they can also talk to people about, like those barriers and issues that are faced from this side of things, and how to best find solutions for those. Heather Campbell was the one that asked that question about if there is a main message you would like to share with these archival institutions. And then in response to what you were just saying, she said that she worked in archives for a while, and they do have to adhere to the wishes of individual donor photographers sometimes. In Canada, it seems the rights of the photographer trump the rights of the subject, their communities, their families. From that, do you have, and we don't have a ton of time to talk about it, but it says, do you have any ideas on how to address this? So Niap, I don't know if you wanted to come in here at this point, because I know that you missed a little bit of that discussion, so sorry about that.
Yeah, I actually would like to say like a small something. I mean, if we're just talking about like the idea of like possession in Inuit culture, like nothing belongs to us, and nothing, and just the fact that or maybe I shouldn't get into that. I I have my baby that's very, 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 very active now. Maybe I shouldn't get into that. So yeah, I'll kind of refrain. My baby's being super active all of a sudden. Super excited. Sorry about that, guys.
No, don't apologize.
Thank you for understanding more. Like,
yes, we love having little baby on with us. It's always good to see. But I think actually, we can use this time to answer that question in a second, but I just want to get back into the chat for a second, because some other comments were made in there that I do want to make sure that we address. Who is this? Heather, I think it is. Heather Campbell says, Niap to you, program officer at the foundation, Kyle Ilisarniq, he might be able to help you with that process of, perhaps re-accessing your own work. So that was a comment in the chat there. And there was something here. Maybe this is something that we could kind of end with, because we don't have a ton of time, unfortunately. Like I said, I would talk to you all day about these things. Could we ask for tips on how you would recommend that artists can take care of themselves while dealing with the emotional weight of working with archives? So, like, is something, or if you could talk to yourself 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or if you're going to talk to someone that's just getting into this, would you have something to share with them? Niap, I ask you if you can, if baby's not too wild.
Man, it's 15 plus years of therapy and dealing with your own trauma and dealing with your own mental health and where you stand. It for sure you can't come in looking at these things with a hurt heart still. Does that make sense? And it might be super disappointing as an answer, but you have to be past it all already as an individual with your own, like, breaking of your own traumas and breaking of your own hurt and your own anger. I mean, unless it can also feed you, you know, like this frustration, this anger, and all this stuff can also feed you and your art, and it really depends on. That's a big question, you know.
It is a
But
big one, and I'm sorry to just kind of.
no, don't be. It's something to think about, and I think, yeah, for myself, I've done like 15 plus years of therapy to be able to be where I am now, and to have kind of like not a distance, but like an understanding and of it all, and being okay with it, and now being ready to celebrate, you know. I think my baby agrees.
No, I think that's an important message too. You know, like you have to know where you are, you have to know who you are and where you are before you start getting into these things. And it's so important to have to take care of yourself throughout, you know, like
Uh-huh.
the whole time, always
Uh-huh.
check in with yourself and always make sure that it's not too overwhelming, and always make sure that, you know, like you don't have to save the world. You do what you
Uh-huh.
can do, and that's
Uh-huh.
the best you can do is the best you can do. So I don't know, Lindsay or Asinnajaq, if you have something else that you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I guess I don't think of it as I think of accessing archives in part as healing. It's actually like a part of making me whole or discovering things. There's a lot of joy in archives. But there's also trauma, and I think most of what I am doing or learning to do is helping to handle bigger traumas or traumas that are for other people, maybe other individuals or communities that I have protection from, because I a generation or two away from the original incident. And for sure there's hurt, but there's just so much joy in knowledge and in discovering and, you know, seeing the faces of family and helping to make that recognized and to celebrate those things. So for me, I think it is part of how I take care of myself is actually by accessing archives. So that's maybe a bad answer because I'm reversing your question on you, but that's how it works for me, for the most part, not always. But I'll never be completely whole. So that's, you know, it's part of making me whole, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful answer. I think, you know, to be able to use these as a healing, part of a healing journey, you know, or part of healing and creating the art itself, or feeling that you are bridging those gaps, I think is also extremely important, you know. And I think probably you can go to both sides in accessing the archive in one day of, you know, like how much it can hurt or traumatize and how much it can heal you or heal your community or your family. I think it's incredible. Asinnajaq, do you have any last thoughts on that one?
I'd say it's true what you just said. It's has both pain and joy inside of it. And I think for me, it's the same tips as for living a good life every single day, making sure I eat, making sure I drink water, making sure there's a friend I can call if I need to laugh or to cry. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think so too. I think just being aware, you know, being aware of what you're doing and taking care of yourself and setting good boundaries when you need to and listening to yourself, I think is all part of that. But okay, we are at 1:26 and we are almost out of time, and this flew by, and I'm so thankful that I got to be a part of this. So I did want to say thank you to everyone that took part in today. It was amazing, and I am always so thankful for everything, and it always makes my day feel so much better after taking part in something like this. It gives me such a good sense of community and culture and sharing, and I love it, and I'm always so thankful. And I'm really thankful for our artists that joined us, and the little baby too. Thank you. And yes, so thank you to everyone that participated today, all of our workshop participants, amazing, and everyone that's in the audience, thank you for joining us today. Inuit Futures in Arts Leadership for partnering with the Foundation on this workshop, RBC Emerging Artists for their generous support of this programming, and of course, Danielle, who's behind the scenes, and she is amazing, and I couldn't do any of this stuff without her. I think that's all of my notes. If anybody needs to contact us, if they have any questions about what we talked about today, or if you have any ideas for upcoming workshops, we're always available. Danielle, if you could put the email address in the chat, that would be wonderful.
Yes,
I think it's artistservices@inuitartfoundation.org. So thank you again so much, everybody. I loved it, had such a great day. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.